Hello and welcome to the second episode of our F-18 simulator tutorial series. This episode is going to be on air-to-air dogfighting. I'm going to show you some of the controls and the displays available, and in the second part of the episode I'm going to show you the workflow relating to an air-to-air engagement. Over here we have the stick grip. Now notice the way that I'm holding it. I have my thumb down here and to the left, deconflicted so that I don't accidentally press any buttons while I'm maneuvering. Instead, it's sitting right next to the weapon selection switch that I can push to the left, to the right, or pull back to select different weapons. Over here in the front, I have the trigger, which I use to fire whichever weapon I have selected. And up here in the bottom left of the face of the stick, I have the radar control switch. So I can press that in various directions to command the radar into different modes, but the most useful of which is automatic acquisition modes. By tapping it to the right like so, I can have the radar automatically try and acquire the nearest target that it finds. If I don't like the target that it's picked, I can press it again, in which case the radar is going to unlock that target and try to find another target to lock up. And this here is a front view of the throttle. So the two important buttons I have on here are the slew switch, which is a four-way switch that I can use to maneuver the cursor around on my radar. So I can push that to the right, to the left, down or up to move the cursor accordingly. And under my middle finger I have the designate button, and when I have the cursor over a target I can just press the designate button to lock up that target. And over here we have the back view of the throttle, from which we can see one more important switch, the chaff and flares switch out here. So I can bring that back to release flares, forward to release chaff, or I can pump it back and forth to keep releasing both if I'm not sure what kind of threat I'm facing. So I have 60 of each, and so I don't really need to worry too much about the quantity. I can just keep on going until I'm sure that the threat is gone. And now we can see what the radar looks like. So it emits in a 140-degree cone in front of our aircraft, and the display accordingly only shows what's in front of our aircraft. So we'd be somewhere down here. And it's also worth noting that since the radar emits in a cone, this bottom line is actually just the width of our aircraft, while the top line is several miles wide. We can see our range up here in the top right, 10 miles, and we can adjust it with the up and down arrow keys. The targets show up as these yellow bricks or white crosshairs. We can move the cursor around using the slew control on the throttle and place it on top of a target, at which point we can click the designate key to designate that target. Alternatively, we can also use automatic acquisition mode using the radar control switch on the stick, in which case by pressing that switch to the right, the radar will automatically lock up the first target it sees. Over here we can see our weapon selection screen, the store page. So it gives us the list of the weapons that we have under each position on the wing down here, and it lets us select them by listing them up here. So we can select a weapon by clicking the corresponding button near it, or by using the master air-to-air weapon selection switch on the stick. Finally, it's also worth noting that right next to it we have the master arm, in which case by flipping that to arm, we'll see that the weapon is armed and ready to fire. In air-to-air mode and with a target locked and a weapon selected, we're going to get some new elements on our HUD. We have that great big circle near the top of the HUD, and that is our steering circle. So we use that to aim at the target. So the circle is always going to stay in the same position on the HUD, and we aim by turning the entire aircraft. Our currently designated target shows up as that flashing square that you see off to the top left of the HUD. And inside the circle, we're going to have an arrow pointing towards the square along with a number, which is the number of degrees in that direction we need to turn. At the bottom of the HUD, we see AM5 telling us that we have 5 of the AIM-120 AMRAAM missile that is currently selected. So we're going to go ahead and turn towards the target. And so the target's going to have this dot that's floating near it. And that is the optimal intercept course for our missiles. So by flying towards that, we are giving our missiles the easiest trajectory to be able to intercept the target so that they don't have to follow the target and waste extra energy that way. And when we have that, when our weapons are selected and our master arm is set to arm and we have the correct course and the target in our circle, then the system's going to give us the shoot cue on top of the target, which is inside the square. In addition to the indicators we get on the HUD, if we have a missile selected and a target locked, we're going to get this white vertical line headed straight through the target telling us that we have it locked up and the weapon is selected. We have a number of bars going through the line. The top bar is the maximum range for the weapon that a maneuvering target might still be able to evade it. The double line in the center is the no escape zone, or the optimal range for employment of the missile. And the bottom bar is the minimum range for the missile, below which we're not likely to be able to get a hit. So here's my general process when going into an air-to-air engagement. So I have my displays here set to the main menus, so I want to set them up for air-to-air. And I can do that really quickly by selecting a weapon with the air-to-air weapon selector on the left side of my stick. So just by selecting a weapon there, it's giving me the radar on the right side and the weapon selection on the left side. So I'm just going to decrease the range on my radar here so we can see our targets in more detail. I can see we have 3 targets, 2 bricks and 1 crosshair, and I have my cursor over here on the left. So I can move my cursor using the slew control on the throttle. That's going to be right under my index finger. So I'll bring the cursor over to the right, and once it's over one of the targets, I can press the designate key that is under my middle finger, again on the throttle. And there we have it, a target lock and weapon aiming cues. So an alternative way to this process is to use the automatic acquisition mode on the radar. So if I cycle my radar modes here, I should get all my targets unlocked. And now by pressing the radar control switch on my stick once to the right, it's automatically going to lock up the first target that it can. And so once again, we have the weapons cues. We have the target showing up just above the 2 middle bars here, showing me that they are just out of the no escape zone. I'm going to speed up here, and I'm going to try switching targets to a closer one. So I can do that by once again hitting the automatic acquisition mode, and it's going to lock up a closer target. Now I'm going to maneuver and fly the aircraft towards the optimal intercept course dot. And now we can see that on the radar it's giving me the shoot cue, which it's also doing up there on the HUD. So if I pull the trigger now, I'll get a missile launch, and we can see a visual representation of the distance that the missile has traveled down here at this arrow. As that travels and reaches the target, that lets me know that the missile has flown long enough and it's probably reached the target by now. Now this doesn't tell me if it hit. Instead I have to analyze and look at the optimal intercept course. If that starts spiraling downwards and hits the ground, chances are the target's been hit. Otherwise, I know that I need to re-engage. And there we have it. I see the optimal intercept course dot is flying all around the place, which means that the target has probably been successfully hit. Let's go ahead and get a closer look and confirm for ourselves. And we can see a fireball there at the ground where my target has been splashed. And here I am flying formation with one of the MiG-23s from earlier. Thank you for watching the second episode of our F-18 simulator tutorial series on dogfighting. Tune in next time for the third episode, which will be on laser-guided Mavericks and their employment. I'll see you next time. I've been waiting for this moment. Guns, guns, guns.